The announcement you made today, given all the history and everything that's been attached to this phrase of institutional racism and discrimination, what got you to this point can't have always been an easy process, I guess.
No, using that phrase, it's been a journey. It's been a journey for the organisation, but actually for me as well. Again, I said today to the meeting at the Scottish Police Authority that there is a resistance to acknowledge that police officers and staff are conflicted, because to use the phrase institutional racism or institutional discrimination suggests that you're condemning the extremely hard-working and honourable men and women who make up police officers and police staff, or you're suggesting there's been no change since the dreadful murder of Stephen Lawrence in 1993, when the phrase institutional racism was introduced by William McPherson in the late 90s. It's wrong to think that. But I actually understood that level of conflict and almost iconic nature of the language. The reason I've said it today is that my understanding, our understanding as an organisation now is far greater. We realise that to properly move on, to make our organisation inclusive, fair and just, there has to be a recognition of these institutional problems. And that's to do with policy, practice, how we offer training, how our HR policies operate, what equipment we give. And it's an institutional matter. So by my recognition of that, it allows us to move forward. And now the test is what action we're going to take, to improve things right across Scotland.
You've said that institutional racism does not necessarily mean that individual officers are racist, but it also doesn't mean the opposite. There will be officers in Police Scotland who may be racist, sexist, misogynist, homophobic. What happens to identify them and to make sure they're not part of the service?
There is absolutely no space, room, acceptance for racism, for homophobia, for sexism, for any level of discriminatory conduct in the police service of Scotland. People who display such conduct will be identified and will be exited from the organisation. That's unequivocal. Unequivocal. And if you choose to act like that, you're not welcome in policing in Scotland. This matter is a different matter. This is not about individual conduct of officers and staff. This is about institutional matters of practice, policy. Some of it unintended, some of it unforeseen, and some of it the consequence of decades, centuries of practice. Policing in Scotland has been around for 200 years. Inevitably, we've inherited some of these structural, institutional barriers that exist. I'm calling it out. I'm saying it exists. But what I am saying, I'm really optimistic that we can go forward, and policing will be at the forefront. And actually, other organisations need to look to themselves. And I include the media in this regard. I include all organisations. Everybody needs to look hard. It's difficult to do, but it's the right thing to do.
What examples do you have of things you've seen, heard, that make you confident in your assessment of this institutional problem?
My assessment of it is based on people's experiences. So people who return from work after maternity leave, how they are reintegrated, what opportunities are given to them, what contact is maintained with them, the type of equipment or body armour we might make to officers and staff, how we look at our provision of health and safety, how we provide officer safety training, how we provide first aid training. All of these matters at times don't have that level of cultural awareness that some people actually feel uncomfortable with or have issues that they haven't raised. We need to be conscious of that. We need to look hard at ourselves, and we need to improve these, remove these institutional barriers so that everybody feels well supported within the organisation.
The reaction to this, I guess, is going to fall into three camps. There will be those who say, yes, you've said the right thing, and they're on board with that. There'll be those inside your organisation and elsewhere who say, you've said the right thing, but we need to see that's followed through in action. And there'll be those, possibly a smaller minority, who say, oh, the Chief Constable's gone woke, this is offensive to his rank and file officers. So how do you counter those criticisms from two kind of diametrically opposed places?
I counter those observations, and if that is the case, I don't know what their action will be, but I know I'm doing the right thing. And actually I firmly believe that I'll be overwhelmingly supported by the men and women, the officers and staff of the Police Service of Scotland, because they know I am not condemning them. I am removing barriers to support them, to enable them, to ensure they've got the trust and confidence of their fellow citizens when they're policing the streets, the communities of Scotland. So I'm saying it because it's the right thing to do. I recognise that there may well be critical perspectives, but this is the right thing to do, and that's why I've said it.
Is this important for both the police's relationship with the public and serving them, but also about the experiences of people in the service going through their careers?
Absolutely, absolutely. I've said often, if we can't treat the people within the Police Service of Scotland fairly, we can't treat the people within the Police Service of Scotland according to their needs and their characteristics, look after their well-being. If we can't do that, what chance have we to go and look after the needs and the well-being of our fellow citizens is what we're charged to do within Scots law. So it's absolutely about the service we provide to our fellow citizens, and it's also about how we look after and how we nurture our own people, and both are of equal importance.
Do you think in 2023 in Scotland it is still harder to be a police officer if you are a woman or non-white or gay than it is to be a heterosexual white man?
I think it is. I think it is. But I don't think policing's alone. I said today that I'm not going around pointing the finger at any other organisations, but I am saying policing doesn't exist in a bubble, particularly in Scotland. We've got a very close relationship with our communities. We're part of the communities, we're known in the communities. In Scotland, the police truly are the public, and the public truly are the police. And of course, if you have particular characteristics that are not mainstream, if you're not like me, male, white, middle-aged, heterosexual, married, it's going to be harder because of these institutional barriers, not only in policing, but in life. So yes, I know it's harder, and that's why I think making this declaration today, unequivocally, will actually enable everybody to flourish and truly be themselves.
You'll be aware of Callum Steele, the former head of the Police Federation, who represent rank and file officers. He has said that Police Scotland was already on its knees and today it's been kicked to the gutter. Presumably you would hope that that is not a commonly held opinion among your officers.
Callum Steele's wrong. What I said today is not an attack or a kick into the organisation. It's quite the reverse. It's a statement of confidence in our officers and staff, a statement of confidence about what Police Scotland has become over 10 years, a very, very difficult period. No other institution in Scotland has gone through the level of reform. No other institution's had the level of scrutiny and focus placed upon it. And that's credit to the officers and staff who carry out their work. I believe that I'm more in touch with officers and staff of Police Scotland than Callum's views. And Callum and I go way back, but on this matter, he's wrong.
In the independent review that came out earlier this week, there was some feedback in that suggested some of the training exercises around equality and diversity were regarded by some as box-ticking exercises. It needs to be more than that, doesn't it?
Oh, completely. Absolutely. What we're doing, the action we're taking is right across the organisation. We know it can improve. Again, that's why we invite independent scrutiny. The level of transparency that Police Scotland is subject to is I think, is greater than any. So inevitably, we will play that in public. We will discuss it at a public forum, criticisms, perspectives. I don't necessarily agree with all the observations, but I respect the legitimacy and I respect the independence of that. We will reflect on that and we will make sure that we make progress.
When you announced that you were going to stand down, I guess the easiest thing to do would be just to kind of go into cruise mode and go quietly. You've done the exact opposite of that by saying what you've said today. Why was it so important to you personally to get this said and done before you leave?
Because it's the right thing to do. My responsibilities, my duties as Chief Constable, it's not the position of the office, it's the responsibility. My core office is the office of Constable, the oath I take to serve the people of Scotland. And I know it's the right thing to do. It's a difficult message to say, it's a difficult message to hear, but properly understood, it should be welcomed. And I think my responsibility as a Chief Constable who's been in place, for the majority of Police Scotland's life, it's my responsibility to do it. It is true what I've said, and that's why I've said it.
Finally, you've become the first head of a major police force in the UK to accept this characterisation. We've seen others quite strongly resist it. What would you say to someone who's in your position elsewhere in the country who might be, as you said you were, kind of wrestling with this issue at the moment? Why should they come to the conclusion that you've come to?
Well, firstly, I can only speak for policing in Scotland. We are a separate nation, a separate jurisdiction. We're part of the United Kingdom, and I work very closely with colleagues right across the United Kingdom policing landscape, a very close and trusted relationship. So it's not a matter for me to take a view on other services or other forces. But I do recognise the difficulty of it. I spoke very personally today about how conflicted I was about coming to this clear realisation. And I think that a number of senior officers and others will be doing a period of reflection, but it's a matter for them. My interest, my focus is on policing in Scotland, the officers and staff of the Police Service of Scotland and the public that we serve. And that's why I've said that today I recognise the institutional discrimination that exists in the organisation as a foundation to go forward and make this organisation even better.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.